Hi everyone, it's Lyra. For those of you who may be seeing me for the first time, I'm a trans woman. I make videos on YouTube sometimes to try to help people learn more about trans issues and to generally try to spread awareness, both for people in the trans community and for people who are maybe on the fence. And I am making this video today because of the suicide of Leelah Alcorn, who, if you haven't heard, she was a transgender teenager, and she took her own life because of her parents being incredibly abusive and isolating her from all possible sources of support for an extended period of time, and doing many other horrible things that completely ruined her life. And first of all, I just wanted to extend my sorrow towards her and to express the sentiment of knowing that she will rest in power. And we say rest in power instead of rest in peace because there is no peace without justice. And right now there is no justice. Not for teenagers who are being controlled by their parents and not allowed to live their genuine lives and being forced to take their own lives as a result. I will never know how horrible that must have been, but I do have some idea. I'm currently 26, and I could not accept that I was trans until I was 24, even though I had started having the feelings that meant that I was when I was 9 years old. We live in a society that doesn't teach people that this is a thing that you can do. And most of our parents don't seem to want you to, even if they do know. And my parents did know. They were both medical doctors. They knew that this was a thing. They just completely were unwilling to accept that it might be true for me. And so when it came down to the personal issue of control, they just would not, they wouldn't do it. And so I was forced into a life that had virtually no meaning for a very, very long time. And I have also attempted suicide, and that's probably why. So I just wanted to say I completely understand where Leelah came from. I completely understand her decision, and I will defend it. Suicide is a horrible tragedy, but it's not something that people do as a silly mistake. It's never the person's fault. Not when they've been going through the kinds of things that Leelah went through. It is our fault as a society for failing to create a world in which she could live. And one of the things I know that was most devastating to her in her decision to take her own life was the fear that she would never pass, that because she was starting too late, she would never look enough like a girl that she would be able to pass and live basically a quote-unquote normal life. And I did want to briefly address that point. It is a common misconception, I think, that the only way that you can ever pass is if you start when you're young. I know several trans women, including myself, who for the most part, we pass pretty consistently. And we started late. I started when I was 24. I know trans women who have started when they were 30 or later. It can happen. And the thing is, after a certain point, it's not even so much about passing anymore. And I understand that there's a lot of harassment and possible danger from not passing. I completely do. But I also understand that it's possible to find places where that's less important. That being said, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I just wanted people to know that it's not necessarily impossible. You don't have to start young. There's a lot of stories in the media right now about how trans people are starting younger. You know, it's these stories about hormone blockers and these sort of media darling trans kids who have been transitioning basically since they were infants. Well, not infants, but very young. And that's awesome. That's incredible. That is absolutely a step in the right direction, and it is absolutely not required. You can transition later, and there can still be hope, especially if we all keep working to make society more accepting. And that's what I really wanted to talk about here. Was there are a lot of things going on that we're trying to do to make this world a safer place for trans youth. And I want to extend this really all divergent youth, whether that be because they're queer or because they have some kind of gender nonconformity or because they're neurodivergent, like they're autistic or they're depressed or have some kind of other condition that renders them not normal. Like all of these kids, they all get exposed to really similar forms of erasure and abuse at the hands of their parents. And that's really what I want to talk about right now. I am sending a message to parents, and I want to be clear about this. I feel so strongly that as a society, we need to be doing more to educate parents about how to be good to their children. And I understand that this is a very touchy subject. I understand that most parents feel incredibly possessive of their own children and don't want anyone telling them how to treat their children. But I would invite those parents to think seriously about the fact that we live in a democracy with laws regarding the protection of adults. There are certain things that you are not allowed to do to adults, or that it is generally considered to be incredibly unacceptable to try to force on other adults. Why would it be okay to force that on your children? What about them being born of your flesh or adopted into your home makes it okay to treat them like they have less rights than another human? I really don't understand this. And I want to invite parents to start talking about this, about how we can all work harder at treating our kids with the respect and the humanity that they deserve, instead of treating them like property that we own and have an exclusive right to decide how we're going to treat. I know that's a really hard subject, and I'm not really here trying to inherently pass judgment. It's just very difficult because at a certain point it starts to seem like if you're really going to say that you have a right to decide what happens with your child's life down to the last detail of their identity, if you're really going to say that, it starts to seem like that must be a pretty selfish thing. I can't see how that comes from a place of compassion. And I understand that there are excuses, there are reasons, there are beliefs that people have that they cling to. But I think if you look closely, you'll see they don't hold up. Some people quote the Bible, but the Bible is a terrible source insofar as there are so many things in the Bible that we have completely disregarded as a society, and that most people who quote the Bible have disregarded too. In the same passages where it says that a man shall not lay with a man, it also says that you can't have clothes with mixed fibers. So no more cotton poly blends and no more tattoos. I mean, there's so many things that are just not reasonable coming from that source. And if it's not coming from a religious source, then where is it coming from? Is it coming from some belief that your child's life will be harder if they are gay or trans? Well, that's true, but you're only going to make it 10 times harder if you tell them not to be. And if you really care about your kids, you need to help them. And helping them doesn't mean making them stop. It means helping to make the world a safer place for people who are. That means attending PTA meetings and advocating for the rights of trans students at your school. That means voting for politicians who will openly support trans-inclusive policies. It means signing petitions like Leelah's Law on change.org, which is asking for conversion therapy to become a crime, and it should be. These are the kinds of things we can do, and above all else, you have to love your kids no matter what, and telling them that there's something wrong with them, that they're not right with God, telling them that you find them disgusting. This is not love. Leelah knew that. She said so in her suicide note. Please, please find more love in your heart. You are all your children have. When it comes to this, more than anyone else in the world, you are supposed to be there for them. So please, please spread the word. Rest in power, Leelah. Thanks, everyone. Bye.